Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I'm here with James, as well as our special guest.
Sophia Tinney.
And today we're going to talk about your work, Fever Dream Nexus, a psychedelic samurai role-playing game that's currently on Kickstarter right now. Um, so I've been having a tricky time. Surrealism is always tricky to explain in generally. How would you explain this role-playing game?
So just to give like the general overview, Fever Dream Nexus is a like samurai psychedelia game. It takes place in a surreal world of dreams and odd physics, weird creatures, and characters themselves actually are pretty human. And that's where a lot of like the interesting aspects come from because they are stuck in this super weird world. So I really would just call it like human punk, psychedelia, weird east.
Yeah. Are the human characters aware that this world is weird? Or is this normal to them?
Yeah, this is normal to them. Like
Okay.
they live out their lives. There's farmers, craftsmen, kings, all that's like standard, just medieval feudal Japan stuff. But in this world where they have to deal with these absolutely crazy encounters.
If I may ask, where did the idea for this come from?
So it has a lot of inspirations. I'd say one of its like most core tenets was from the game Kenshi, which has like kind of this like apocalyptic like a samurai adventure to it. A lot of the art style comes from like the absurdist art and like emotional moral dramas in Disco Elysium. And then there's just plenty of like my own experiences with like exploring like psychedelia and psychedelics, and that's kind of shown itself in the work and how a lot of like the art style is laid out.
And so, who or what can you be in this game exactly?
So you play as a sleepwalker, which is basically this kind of tragic, troubled adventurer who they lost their home or they gave up on their home, whatever the matter, they now have nowhere to turn to. So they roam between cities, which is super dangerous because when the sun sets, crazy nightmares happen. So most people just kind of stay put. So you roam between different cities, solving crimes, saving innocents, just trying to do good because you have such a bad past.
So
So
it's
yeah,
still
you're
really
just
leaning in. Yeah, so it's still really leaning into that kind of adventure vibe, and that's very cool.
yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Oh, okay. And when it comes to character creation, how is it done exactly? Do you have like attributes? How does that work exactly?
So I would say it's really inspired by maze rats, which is another like OSR system, if you're familiar with that. It has very light underlying mechanics to kind of really encourage characters to um, solve problems in really inventive ways. There's only three stats for each character. Like, it's got like a standard like intelligence stat, then kind of a charisma slash kind of dexy stat, and then obviously like some strength. Um,
Huh.
and beyond that, there is just three components of a character. You don't actually roll for stats, but instead you roll for your culture, background, and shadow. And those actually give you your stats on top of everything else.
Huh.
So character creation is like that.
Really quick, very cool. And then, of course, the
Mhm.
tracks, which
Yeah. So
those I find really exciting. Go ahead, tell us about the tracks.
yeah. So the tracks are really cool components. I do say they're optional in the book, but everyone's gonna use them. They're a super cool system where basically your character's ego has very strong power in the Nexus because of its like dreamlike Buddhisty like properties. So your ego is actually able to be unleashed into the world with a track that is basically your inner soul, your inner psalm. And these tracks are based off like familiar real music, lots of psychedelia, lots of hyper pop, lots of like pop and like emo stuff from the 2000s when I was growing up.
Hmm.
Um, so you kind of channel that out, and it does ability, a supernatural ability that you can't really get anywhere else, and only sleepwalkers can do this for the most part, and then like some really powerful NPCs. So it's really cool because these are written very, very open-ended, with very little mechanics and stats surrounding them to really encourage characters to use them like often and use them open-endedly, like solving situations you wouldn't imagine with them. They are
Hmm.
a lot more powerful than like a traditional D&D spell, for example.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, no. When I did the Kickstarter video, I likened them to essentially spells, and it wasn't. It was. It's not the best analogy, but it was the closest that I could kind of transfer over to a regular role playing kind of scenario. Um,
Hmm.
do you do you envision people like actually singing these at the table when they're playing, or
So I've had some players in playtesting that actually like they recognize the song and they just start singing
Mhm.
the lyrics. All the
Nice?
times I will like play the song like over stereo like while they're doing it, which is always really funny because it's sometimes it's really thematic, some Tame Impala in the middle of like a fight, and sometimes some guy just uses like a Nicki Minaj song,
Yeah.
and it throws the vibe off, but it's a great time.
I remember watching Dreamscape in the 80s. I don't know if any of you both have seen that
That the
movie.
one with Dennis Quaid?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
It was a
yeah.
movie where uh you, they developed a technology that you go inside some people's dreams to kind of help them. And then there was this guy who was using it to take control of people. So there will be these very surrealistic like settings in the dreams, and it kind of and it morphs like all dreams do. And is the setting for this game similar? That's because when I was reading the description, it reminded me a little bit of that. There's a place, but it's not a place. It just keeps morphing. Am I right?
In flux, as it were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that. I would say it's a bit more defined because people do like live ordinary lives. It's set up, if I can go into like super detail about it, it's kind of set up like a wedding cake. So there's like these levels, and each one's built on top of the next. And this wedding cake doesn't make sense, even to the inhabitants. It's kind of like a infinite wedding cake. Each layer is the same size as the last, and it goes up and it goes down infinitely. So
Hmm.
there is a lot of weirdness once you start to like move away from civilization, and you get to these really weird layers, these plates that are just really out there. They're constantly shifting. But the main plates, they are mapped out like you have all these different subregions, and each of these have tables because I adore tables. And there's like definitely a table for everyone for like encounters, and there's a second table for every region for alterations. So similar to like the whole flux idea, you could enter a glass forest and you could come through at one time. Everything's just made, all the trees are made out of glass, super weird, but whatever, don't cut yourself. And the second time you come through, it could, instead of being glass, it could be like entirely new material. It could be like living flesh. It could be some really weird stuff. So characters never see the same location the same way twice.
Oh,
Nice.
interesting. Oh, okay.
Yeah. But
Uh,
it's like so I'm looking at your picture of the Nexus, and there's like
Mhm.
the dead wall and some specific bodies of water and stuff like that. So I guess there are some things that are more solid and less in flux than others within it. So there still is some
Um,
level of
Yeah, so there's definitely safe points. Like on the map, there's plenty of little like civilization, like little cities and hamlets, and those are safe. Like that part of the thematic element is like humans hide in these like safer areas.
mhm.
But like the wall, for example, is another example of like civilization where it's been abandoned and this ancient wall has started to like change. It's no longer the exact same every time. It's now like
Mhm.
slightly different underneath, slightly different
Uh-huh.
on top. So like the further you get from civilization, the weirder and less consistent like physics and
Mhm.
environment is.
Could you explain to us about the dice we need for this game and how would it be used? I think I read somewhere all you need is 2d6. Did I understand that correctly? Or
Yeah, so it's a totally just a D6 system because D6s are awesome and not enough systems use them. It's specifically 2D6, so like you get the whole bell curve. It has a partial success as well to help push like drama along mid-scene. But yeah, generally you usually roll 2D6. Sometimes you have options to pull like from the Fever Dream pool, which has its own crazy effects. It destabilizes the area, causes all sorts of crazy events. You can also use a shadow die, which represents your character's like inner um, turmoil, inner dark side, inner like trauma or tragedy, like mental problem you can't get over. And you can pull those dice and use them with the 2d6 to get better rolls, but with both of those, there's like huge risks involved, and that really changes like scenes and how characters interact with conflict.
Again, it's like you say you're in love with the tables, and I know one of the stretch goals is the tables, more tables.
Yes.
But and I love the random elements that you seem to be creating, especially with the creation of characters. It sounds like they're very randomly created, and you build from that random template that you sort of roll out. Is there still a lot of freedom for self-expression within those random elements?
Oh yeah. So like it is an OSR system, so like you don't really create a character like you would with 5e or Fate or other
Mhm.
systems, but with the random elements, they are deliberately very open, and I actually describe them as like poetically and airheadedly as possible, so people can really interpret them. Um, let me think. So, if is it okay if I go into like detail with each one?
oh,
Oh,
Like
please,
the shadow
please.
please.
culture background. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So cultures is probably the biggest one, and it's the one that has like just copious art. I mean, I put so much effort into the cultures. They are basically like a representative of your like religion or traditions, like upbringing. Sometimes like race. You might have different hair color based off your culture. But they are left extremely open-ended. They are very, 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 very undetailed. They kind of like are poetic in how they're written. They use lots of really fancy words. So the art itself also is very not human. So I recently had a player ask, there is a culture with that's covered in eyes in their picture. I think I'll be putting it on the Kickstarter soon in an update. But and I had a player ask, so are these eyes like real? Do I have these eyes on my character, or is it just the art? And I was like, do you want the eyes? And they did. So it's left very open-ended for people and players and DMs to kind of take and alter and mess with. Cultures give you, just to summarize them mechanically, they give you two abilities, like very open-ended ones, like the Keiji on the front page is a justice man who, he gets by using a sword that he only takes out for the right moment, but he's also a cannibal. And that's an interesting little like um to have like as a whole culture, and the cultures are reflected in the world. Like every NPC has their culture listed, so you can really like interact with the conflicts between cultures, between
You can
like
find your
dynasties.
own people in there, and it essentially it's like this is
Exactly.
okay.
Yeah, so then there's backgrounds, which just give you stats and like starting items, and it could be as simple as something like, oh, I'm a dreamsmith, or I'm a turtle tamer, or they could be really, really like descriptive of like, oh, you were in prison your entire life, you were stolen away by desert witches. So they could be really open-ended too. They kind of just give you like a foundational, like what you did before you're a sleepwalker. And then finally there is shadows, which is like your trauma or past history. It could be something like, oh, you lost someone. It could be like you are addicted to something or some substance. It could be like you really just hate humanity, like you just hate humans.
Mhm.
Um, there's a huge difference between them. They all have different like gameplay effects when your character like mentally breaks from stress. They give you like goals when you break and ways to get out of that mental break.
Hmm.
but they're all super open-ended. They're very like, oh, you lost someone. You could decide who, and you can mix that with your culture and mix that with your background to get like a whole character.
So let's talk about the Kickstarter campaign going on right now. What can you tell us about it? Do you have any stretch goals? What were your plans?
Yeah, so right now we got funded like I think last week. I'm currently moving towards, I believe, our 4K stretch goal, which would add like a bunch of cool mythological blades with innate abilities to it, which adds like a whole new like layer on top of tracks that I'm really excited for. Like you mentioned, there's also like a big tables stretch goal I want. There's like a little physical one with postcards. One where I like make art for all the characters or like all the named head of factions, head of bandits, head of kingdoms. I'm really excited for that one because I get to do more art and more character writing.
Do you do all the art for the book?
Yeah, so I write,
Oh, okay.
illustrate, and design the book.
Wow,
Oh,
that's a rarity. Usually you don't find.
triple threat.
Oh, that's
I
an
like
amazing
it. I
job.
mean, it gives me a lot of control over everything, just everything just works together.
Yeah. And I do like the art for this.
Mhm.
It fits what you're trying to put together very well.
Thank
Um,
you. Yeah.
and I assume it's the same inspirations, Kenshi and so forth, when it came for the art for this.
Yeah, just lots of like really like psychedelia in general.
Okay, excellent. And now, if anyone that watches this, and maybe by then the Kickstarter is long over, is there a website or any place they can go to find out more about this?
Yeah, so the Kickstarter page will still be up to get more info, but I will do the same as I did with my last project, my last Line Quest project, and I will be putting up a late backer option, like a late pre-order option on my Gumroad, which would be gumroad.com/thepirate.
Hmm.
So you
We'll put a
should be
link
able
below.
to just go there. Yeah, and then they're also be on the Kickstarter as well.
Okay,
Awesome.
excellent. And if I may ask, what was your last project?
Kingdoms, Design of Generational Proportions. It was like in 2020 or so. That one's also on my Gumroad, so you can also find it there. And with the Kickstarter, you can also get it like a reduced cost if you back it before it ends.
Oh, interesting, interesting.
Are the two games linked in any way, or is there any idea to do that, or are they completely separate entities?
Yeah, they are. Well, I carry over a lot of philosophies of them, like a very simple three stat system,
Hmm.
but they are separate in terms of world building and gameplay mostly. I do have some little nods though in
Hmm.
Nexus for Kingdoms players, so
Right on.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward. Like when I first came upon this, Manny talks about the visual element. I remember several years ago, I'm just thumbing through pictures and RPGs. And was one looking, and I came across this one called Overlight, and it's one of the few games I've ever picked up because of the cover, and it's
mhm.
beautifully, wonderfully colored. Do you know it at all? It's
I think I've seen it in stores. It's like really colorful.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's painted. It's just, but like really, really colorful. So it was the first thing that caught my eye was your image of the four-armed samurai with the rainbows in the background, and I'm like, oh, I need to see what this is. So I love getting away from the browns and grays that seem to dominate a lot of games and stuff, and I love seeing a lot of color. So that excites me a lot in terms of this. Other than pretty much everything. I mean, I fell in love with this as soon as I laid eyes on
Thank
it.
you.
So
Hell yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So I'm very excited to see how this comes out.
Hmm. So I have one last question. So dreams, people have studied it throughout hundreds and hundreds of years, and people have used that as either messages from God or message of the inner self to figure out the riddle of who we are and what we are. For a game like this, was there? Did you did you hope that? Is there any impressions or themes that you wanted to uh, give players or game masters uh, about what you're creating?
Like in terms of like the gameplay itself and like the world and stuff.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
your philosophy.
Yeah, so this book is, I think it's a little bit deceptive because you see it's like super colorful and you hear about like sleepwalkers using cool tracks and stuff, but the whole shadow system is a very big core of the game. A lot of the game is playing like characters with trauma or like just a past that is really, really bad. And they carry that with them and they can't shake it. So I think there needs to be like vulnerability in the game for players and DMs to play really troubled characters and explore the themes that can come from that, whether it could be like whether it could be like a bit darker than you expect from like a 5e game or some other traditional RPG. I think having that door open to explore troubled characters entering troubled situations with other morally complex, motivated NPCs is where the core of the game comes together. And just kind of like Disco Elysium, which was a huge inspiration in terms of storytelling. I think it's really important to be able to like DM that as a group and we have conversations between characters and between each other about
Mhm.
like morals, ideals, and your past.
Well, it sounds like not that I'd want you to elaborate, but it sounds like this is there's a very personal journey for yourself in the creation of this game as well. Is that am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, I would say there definitely is because like my I won't go into super detail, but like between 2020, like when I launched my last project and this one, it's been a good 3 years. I was going through some things that I wanted to put down writing like forever. But like coming back to it this year, like I find a lot to pull from and a lot of things to inspire myself from now.
Mm.
Awesome.
Well,
Well,
thank you for taking the time to talk to us about this amazing project. Viewers, this is again called Fever Dream Nexus. It's out on Kickstarter and it's going to end, at least currently right now, it's going to end, looks like within 2 weeks. So this will be out before then. And definitely check it out. We'll put the description and link below. Sophia, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. Any last
thank you,
words
thank
before
you.
we sign out?
Thank you guys for having me on. Like I love talking about my stuff and I can see you guys are really enthusiastic just like me. So I appreciate the time.
Excellent.
Not a
And
problem. Geeks got to support the geeks.
indeed. And
Hell
viewers,
yeah.
like and subscribe. Let us know. Check this out and let us know what you think in the comments below. Stay safe out there. Good dreams, everyone.